Hello, everyone out there in social media land. We are the Flint Public Health Youth Academy, and we have an excellent show for you today. We will be speaking with Ms. Mona Monroe Eunice from Environmental Transformation Movement of Flint, and I will turn it over to our amazing host, Kayla.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to have you here. So excited to be talking about another important public health issue that is actually personally affecting us in the city of Flint right now, and even possibly an opportunity for you all to mobilize yourselves or to be mobilized alongside us. But before we dive right into that, I want to take a moment for all of us to introduce ourselves, and then, of course, for our special guest to also introduce herself. But first, I'll start with our FIA youth, as well as our mentors, and we'll start off with Amir.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Amir Brown. I'm a college student currently, and I've been in FIA for about 3 years, give or take. And welcome our guest. So welcome. Yes.
All right, Cole.
Hi, my name is Cole Mays. I just graduated high school and I've been at FIA for around a year now. And I plan to go to Kettering for engineering.
All right, Cruz. Okay, looks like he might be frozen. Monisha, are you able, Dr. Summers?
Hi, I'm Anisha. I'm one of the mentors and staff with FIA. And I've been working with FIA since 2017. And I've been working at MSU since 2017.
Okay, and Cruz, are you back? Okay, we'll move forward to Everett.
Hello, everyone. My name is Everett Graham. I am 17 and a FIA intern. I think I'm closing in on my third year, or fourth. It's kind of running together these days. But yeah, that's me.
Okay, and then we'll have Jasmine.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I am one of the FIA mentors and staff. I've been with FIA since 2020, and I'm also an epidemiologist and yoga teacher.
And then I'll introduce Everett, sorry. Last but certainly not least, Everett.
I just went a second ago.
I'm sorry. It's a Friday.
It's okay.
You know what? Excuse me.
Understand.
Cruz, are you able to introduce yourself? I think that's what I was thinking.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes. No.
Ooh, okay. I'm Cruz Duarte, a senior English major at Morehouse College. I've been with FIA around 3 to 4 years.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was missing. And then I'll introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Shannon. I'll be our moderator for this evening. I have been with FIA for about 2 years. I am, outside of this, I am a junior at the illustrious Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as I do some grassroots work in the city of Flint. And I actually have been blessed to actually work in collaboration with our guest speaker today. And so I'll have her introduce herself next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mona from the Environmental Transformation Movement of Flint. Really excited to join you today. Thanks for having me.
All right. So thank you for being here. We'll get right into it. We want to know from you, Mona, if you could tell us a little bit about your career path. So before becoming the powerhouse that you are today, what did you, when you were younger, actually think that your career path would look like? Is this where you thought you were going to go? And then sort of how did you end up where you actually are?
Okay, well, I moved, this will date me, but I moved to Flint in 99 when I was 19. And I moved here to attend the University of Michigan Flint for their environmental science and management program. And what I thought I was going to be doing is conservation work or international negotiations work related to conservation in along the Nile River. My family's from Egypt. My dad's side. And I'm the firstborn in the US on his side of the family. And my grandparents had a farm in the Nile Delta. And, you know, because of the Aswan Dam, there had been a lot of degradation to the land and the water, and that was affecting farmers. There were issues around who controls the water all along the Nile. And it was having an issue, it was having like a spillover effect into the Mediterranean. So that's what I thought I was going to be focusing on. And then I came to Flint and I fell in love with it. And I kind of found my tribe and got rooted here, and have been in Flint ever since. So then I knew I wanted to do something related to environment and fairness. And I didn't have the language environmental justice at that time. You know, when in the late 90s, there was more language around like eco psychology or eco justice, which is not necessarily the same thing. So if I could, I just want to share a definition of environmental justice that like crystallized for me what I should be doing. Actually, it was the person who coined this definition that got me the language that I needed to understand what I wanted to do. So when I moved to Flint, I started to understand disparities at a deeper level. You know, I could see them kind of internationally from my lived experience, but but between Saginaw Township and Flint is what I started to really notice. Like, man, I lived across the street from like this amazing park, and we had all these fruit trees, and I would like play with worms when I was a kid, and I had a cherry tree I would sit under, and it was just like the most magical part of my life was being connected to the land. And I thought, everybody deserves this. Why doesn't every kid have this? And so later I was reading some of the work of folks like Dr. Bunyan Bryant, and I wanted to share this picture really quick. Oops, sorry. So Dr. Bunyan Bryant was my grad school faculty advisor, and he actually grew up in Flint. So he moved to Flint when he was around 13, somewhere in there, from, I believe it was Arkansas. And he was shaped by his life in Flint. And he went on at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor to found the first environmental justice higher ed program that went undergrad to PhD. Other programs have environmental sociology and other kinds of ways of thinking about environmental justice, but I love his definition. So, and I really want to share it to kind of ground us, because if you look at the EPA definition, it basically comes down to we apply environmental laws equally, but what if the laws don't go far enough to protect people? What if the law is optional? As we'll talk about later, like how the state interprets its laws for making sure that people don't have cumulative impacts of multiple sources of pollution in the same neighborhood. What if the laws are inherently unjust? So that doesn't actually protect everybody, even if you apply them equally, right? So Dr. Bryant says, environmental justice refers to the cultural norms, values, rules, regulations, behaviors, policies, and decisions that support sustainable development, so people can interact with confidence that their environment is safe, nurturing, and productive. Like, you go out in the world and you know you're going to be okay, that the environment is there to support you in living your best life, so you can realize your highest potential without experiencing isms, racism, sexism, ableism, all of it, right? And then all of the other things that we want support environmental justice: good jobs, safe jobs, schools, recreation, decent housing, healthcare, democratic decision-making, personal empowerment, communities free of violence, drugs, poverty, and where both cultural and biological diversity are respected and highly revered, distributive justice prevails, which means everybody gets the benefits and the environmental issues aren't all concentrated in certain neighborhoods. So to me, that's really about liberation, right? Having an environment that is about liberation. So I just wanted to share that. He's a very special person in my life, and I was lucky to be able to study with him before he retired. But I knew prior to that I wanted to focus on environmental justice, and I did that for a really long time as a volunteer. What shifted me to want to start an organization around it, I'd played with the idea for a while, but I had a kid in the middle of the water crisis. And my son was born in 2015, the day after Mayor Weaver announced the state of emergency. And my family is very privileged. We were able to, have a credit card so we could do some home water treatment and things like that to try to protect him. We got on filters really early, not realizing there was a lead problem. But even with all of that, he broke out in a head to toe rash, and he was 2 months old trying to tear his skin off. And I was just like a ball of anger in 2016. And it's one thing if you hurt me, but you hurt my child, Mama Bear's coming out. So, thankfully we had folks like Melissa, Naira, and Claire, and so many others who were really on the front lines as organizers. I was really trying to muddle through it through my positions at a university and try to make a difference there through that approach. And I was also trying to advocate as a resident and as a mother. So I sent pictures of him to all the agencies. I chronologically said, this is what has happened. These are the steps we've tried to take to ease his discomfort and this severe rash. His skin was really hard. We were putting lotion on him 6 times a day and it wasn't making it soft. His skin was mottled all over, very red, very rough. And long story short, I don't want to talk too long, but long story short, we proved as well as we could with the science that it was the water that did that to him. And I thought, man, we've had every privilege, and there's a lot of folks who weren't able to take even half the steps that we could do. And they were suffering so much more. And what would it have been like if we had an on-the-ground organization in place with trained residents on standby to be able to show up at a city council meeting in mass, to be able to gather. So much of the water crisis was just trying to figure out, what do we do? What kind of questions should we be asking? What are the different points of connection that need to come together to address this citywide, crisis, disaster? And so I just felt, after I vetted the idea, I felt like it's time. I just felt like we needed an organization that was focused not just on water, but also like air and soil quality and land use and all of that from an environmental justice lens. So that's what we're here to do. And because there's so many different environmental justice issues in Flint, it's just, there's layers and layers of them. We focus on really building the capacity of residents to be environmental justice organizers all over Flint. We want to help build people's muscles and create a trained network of people so we are ready to go, because this isn't going to be the last thing. Ajax is not going to be the last thing. Where there's leadership needed, I'm here to help convene coalitions and do direct advocacy work and leverage different relationships to bring people together. And I really, also, the other thing I really want to bring to Flint is, it's so, as you guys know, it's so tiring to be doing this work at times, right? And we have to sometimes fight, like with the Ajax case, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But we need to be able to shift from fighting what we don't want to creating what we do want, right? So we have this Buick City site. There's a buyer. It's one of the biggest undeveloped brownfields in the country, and it's going to get redeveloped. We need to have a say in how that happens. We need to be ready with a community vision before they start putting stuff on the ground. So that's the kind of shift I want to help make happen. So anyway, that's my career path, and I didn't really answer the question. My career path, it took me 8 years to get my bachelor's because I was trying to figure out exactly which avenue I wanted to go. And I worked at U of M Flint, first in the research office, doing accounting kind of stuff. And then I worked in university outreach where I supported partnerships. And then I shifted more into working with faculty and students on experiential learning and applied projects within their teaching, learning, and research. And then I worked at the School of Public Health in Ann Arbor from 2016 to 2019 to address the water crisis in that capacity. So again, it's pairing like the science with the advocacy and mobilizing students to help with different aspects of the water crisis response. And then I shifted to the city of Flint for a couple of years because I had a little one and I really wanted to work closer to home, and the drive was really rough. And so I was a neighborhood planner with the city, which is what I went to my undergrad for, really. That's what that degree was more focused on. 20 years later, I don't have a traditional career path. I don't think it always works that way. Some people can do that. It took me, also part of what took me 8 years to get my bachelor's was that I was able to pay off my school as I went. It's kind of a judgment call. Do you want to knock it out and have loans? Or do you take the long road and you paid it off, you kind of pay it off as you go? And that's what I wanted to do because I was enjoying what I was doing. And then with the neighborhood planner work, I worked on things like demolition, working with community groups to shape how federal HUD-funded grant would be spent in their neighborhoods. So basically like improvements around new affordable housing. And then some funders approached me and said, we want to give you money to do what you're doing to like help grow your organization. So that's when I switched to doing environmental transformation movement of Flint work full-time in April. I did that as a volunteer every waking chance I could outside of work and taking care of my kid for like 4 years.
Well, thank you for all of that. And I know you said you took the long way, but I think all of everything you said was important. And a few things that stuck out to me was one, the definition of environmental justice. I think oftentimes when people think of environment, they're just like the forest, like trees and water. They think of like our natural environment, right? But I love how your definition and explanation of environment also includes like where you live and where you work and where you go to school and even our developed environments that we have created through the industrialization process, because those are the things alongside, of course, with protecting our natural environment. The things within our built environment are often those that are creating negative impacts on the natural environment, or the things that are directly impacting us, like in the present moment. So that stuck out to me. And then two, your explanation of, or I was looking at your picture that you had, the difference between reality as opposed to equality, as opposed to equity, as opposed to liberation. And what I appreciate about the work that you're doing is that it seems like there's a focus on liberation, not only, as you said, creating, not only living in a system, because obviously right now we know that the reality is disparity, right? Disparity is built into our American system and our American culture, but not working towards giving everyone the same thing, or even necessary, which is equality, giving everyone the same thing, or even necessarily giving everyone what they need in order to be at the same place, which is equity, but reaching a point of liberation where the obstacle or the barrier doesn't even exist. And I think that's really what the work that you do does, by mobilizing residents, by creating systems and having systems in place so that when these environmental injustices that are almost inevitable in urban environments, such as the city of Flint, that has unfortunately become and I say this sort of crudely, a dumping ground to our government has been a dumping ground to factories and now is becoming a dumping ground of pollution and other things along that are compounded by the other things that have happened in the city of Flint, such as the crisis and as well as the pandemic. And what I appreciate about the work that you do is it isn't necessarily to work to a place where we can survive in the system, but to correct the system so that it isn't something we have to survive through. And then last but not least,
we should be
I'm sorry.
thriving. We should be
We should be
thriving.
thriving.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just
Not to
surviving.
survive, but to thrive in our environments. That's what we deserve. And I think that's what your definition spoke to. And then last but not least, your path, your career path, I found so interesting and also so inspiring, because I think especially for those in the young adult age and in this modern day, like there's this idea that you have to have it figured out by the time you graduate high school, basically, because college comes and then you have to figure it out and you have to know what degree you want and you have to know where you're going, or you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for no reason. And I really appreciate that you are a living testament of what it means to take your time and to really let life be the guide of your career rather than money or other things. And so I really appreciated that. And if you don't have any further comments, I'm ready to move forward to our next question.
I was just going to say really quickly, when I was an undergrad, I applied for a work study position in the Office of Research and I filed papers. And then when my supervisor retired, because I knew all the accounts, that's how I got into doing accounting. Is I got put, I did her work when she retired. I never would have thought I would be doing that, but I wanted to do work study in research because I thought I could like learn so much about different topics, but I never thought I would do more than just be a work, have a role other than a work study there. So you just never know where life will take you. Doors will open in ways that you can't even imagine, and don't be afraid to step into it if it's something that you find exciting, that you want to explore. It's not linear. We're taught it's linear. You go to high school, you go to college, you do grad school, maybe, or maybe not,
Exactly.
Just embrace life.
All right. Thank you for that. So moving on to our next question, with the high profile environmental justice issues that you've been involved in, can you give us like a brief overview as well as an update about like what your experience of these issues has been? And I think we'll start off with the Ajax, because that's like, I know one of the pressing issues that your organization is working on right now.
Yeah, so last July, a bunch of us were working really hard on getting Flint voices into the EPA spaces. They were redesigning revising their lead and copper rule, and we said there absolutely have to be Flint voices, and our experience has to inform how that law is rewritten. So we are like working on it really intensely. Got to be part of like EPA roundtables, got the EPA to expand the roundtables that they had. They were going to do five roundtables for the whole country, roundtable conversations. And we said, you've had a major water crisis in Flint. This is not unique to Flint. There are some parts of it are unique, but some parts of it are happening all over the country. You need to do more. So they did 12. We wrote a like 30-some page report with recommendations. So we were deep in that work. And Monica Villarreal from Michigan United said, I got this email. We all got this email, Nair and us, too. We got this email from EPA saying there's a public comment period for this Ajax hot mix asphalt plant. And the thing actually erroneously said it was in Flint Township. And and then it came out like Genesee Township, but we're like, okay, it's not Flint. Well, what came to light in early August was, one, that the state had only sent notifications to the Ajax site is in, let me back up. The Ajax site is in Genesee Township, right on the border of Carpenter Road. And the north side of Carpenter and north of that is Genesee Township. And the south side of Carpenter and south of that is Flint. And if I may show a slide really quick, just to kind of situate where the location is.
Yeah.
Okay, slideshow. Okay, so this is the zoning map for Genesee Township. This purple is their heavy industry. Where the legend is Flint. And you have river, so here's Industrial Drive, there's this incinerator, which was one of the first environmental justice cases tried under their, specifically as an environmental justice case in the country, tried under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And the EPA sat on that complaint for about 25 years into the very last day of Obama's administration when they ruled in Flint's favor. But that incinerator continues to operate. It's this huge industrial park. There's other factories in that area. This is Dirt Highway right here. Tons of industry, as you can see. Across the way here's Carpenter Road Elementary, which is now closed. Then there's a bunch of single family homes here on the Flint side. River Park, which is the largest public housing, like Section 8 housing complex in the city at this point. And next to it is Ridgecrest, which is a privately owned low-income public housing complex as well. So between the two housing complexes, you have about 400 families. And that's across from this massive industrial park. And Eagle, the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, sent letters dated July 1st, but actually arrived at people's addresses 3 weeks later, 3 weeks into a six-week public comment period, informing them of this public comment period. And they sent one probably to the Flint Housing Commission and maybe one to Ridgecrest, but not to the all 400 families. And they held the state held its they had an info session and they held it on election day in August. So that also, you know, is in line with like violations of civil rights, because it intentionally or not, it reduces public participation. And then you can see the kind of systemic issue here, right? Where is all the industry located? It's located near Black families in Flint, in Mount Morris, and in Genesee Township right here, right? So this is by definition environmental racism. You can see it on the map. It is by design. So one of the things we've been doing, we started this like massive effort to try to stop the state from issuing this permit for the Ajax plant to be built. And we did that by doing a big public awareness campaign. We got over 400 people, including many residents immediately in the area, to speak out against the plant. We got thousands of people to sign petitions. We did a mock funeral in Lansing and delivered all of that documentation and more to the state and to the Attorney General's office. We did a lot for the media to try to get people to come out. We put a lot of pressure on the state, got them to extend their public comment deadline 3 times. At first they said, well, we can't do a new public hearing. I said, well, you are looking at a Title VI civil rights complaint, because that's a problem. And what they found with the incinerator case, which was on the basis, like Mrs. Deloney and others were the people on the ground fighting that, and St. Francis Prayer Center next door, people in Flint who were really early champions of environmental justice, long before my time, in the 90s, we're laying the groundwork for what we're doing now. But they were, their complaint was on the basis of the public participation process was a violation of civil rights because Genesee Township was doing things like preventing people from gathering and speaking out together and hearing each other's questions. Well, when the state had done a public comment opportunity at Genesee Township Hall, which is not accessible by bus, by the way, we could come in 3 people at a time. You could come in, and they said because of COVID, right? You could call a number and leave a voicemail. You could write out your statement or you could email it. I spent 40 minutes typing my statement and it was lost. No, they went back to all the 50 people who commented that day and they said it was the only one that was lost. Sorry, you're gonna have to resubmit. But I was livid. I was pretty livid. So we just did a lot to raise awareness. I've been doing monthly or more gatherings at River Park, and we have mounted a legal case. So unfortunately, even though there's a law, Rule 228 in Michigan, that gives the state legal authority to consider cumulative impact in their decision making, because usually with a permit, what they do is they say, okay, what's going to be the additional pollution that comes out of this new activity, this new plant, right? And does it meet all the regulations? This goes back to the whole definition of environmental justice. You can apply that equally, but here's the problem. That neighborhood where River Park is already has an incinerator. It already has a universal coatings plant. It has all these other, there's dumping sites around. There's a whole host of other environmental issues all in that area. You can apply that law the same and it will have a very different outcome, right? So it's not a just law. So that's why people had worked hard in Michigan and got this cumulative impact protection for Michigan residents. But Eagle sees it as optional. So they were not willing to consider cumulative impacts on existing pollution when they reviewed their permit. And we also had we got the mayor and Flint City Council they submitted their own public comment. The EPA itself also wrote a public comment against Ajax, against the permit. HUD at the federal level wrote a public comment against Ajax. A county commissioner, I think maybe the commissioners of the body, Flint Housing Commission. And part of the problem is that because this is located in Genesee Township, nobody in Flint had any decision-making control on the zoning side. So like in the Fenton area and Tyrone Township, they were able to oust a hot mix asphalt plant because they're like, no, we're not going to rezone from agriculture to industry. Well, we didn't have that opportunity because it was zoned that in the 80s after River Park was there. So where we're at right now is we have sued the state. They've issued the permit. The plant is being built. I can show you a picture from yesterday, if it will show up on this. I don't know if it'll show up on the screen. It's very much built. It's not in operation yet. It's you could smell it. You can smell like ozone or something coming off of it. Like a weird chemically smell already.
That's Ajax?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah, we walked there yesterday with some of the Freedom School interns. We were canvassing in the area and we were like, oh, you can smell it. And so we've sued the state. The city of Flint has also sued the state to try to stop the permit. It's a long process. So similar to the incinerator case, it will be operating while we're still fighting it. Thankfully, the Ajax, the hot mix asphalt plant, which it can burn your eyes, it can cause cancer, it can cause asthma. That neighborhood is one of the highest has one of the highest asthma hospitalization rates in the state already. We put all of this in our public comment. We have a legal team through Earth Justice and the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center and the National Housing Law Project who informed our public comment. We put everything in there. You have the Rule 228 you can lean on. We gave Eagle everything they needed to deny the permit, and they had solid legal ground, and they didn't do it. So now okay, I already said that we're suing the state. We have 2 civil rights complaints at the federal level. One is through EPA. against Eagle, and that's because of the public participation. What I meant to say earlier was when they were like, oh, sorry, we can't do a new public hearing. And I was like, well, Title VI civil rights complaint. Well, they did actually listen and they pushed it and they did a new one, but they was only over Zoom. They were not willing to do in person. And so it was up to us to try to mobilize the community again. So again, it's like, oh yeah, we'll do the thing to get you off our back, but it wasn't like a meaningful engagement. We also have a civil rights complaint against Genesee Township through HUD. And the reason that that's so important is because I keep like harping on this cumulative impact issue. We can get rid of Ajax, something else will move in there. So unless we disrupt the fact that they have zoned all of their heavy industry near neighborhoods of color, and even national data through the EJ Screen tool, this is online mapping tool, and now the state has one that looks at health data as well as environmental toxic data. You can see 85% of neighborhoods in the immediate area 1 mile around the Ajax site are Black families. It's a very concentrated area of industry and Black families. So it's clear environmental racism. So we're trying through advocacy, the legal system, everything to address this. And I'm really excited to be partnering with the Freedom School. If I can show this slide as well. And I want to let Kayla talk more about it, but if I can just show this slide really quick. Is that okay, Kayla, if I show it now? Okay. So we have a protest coming up next week. And oh, I keep hitting the wrong button. I'm so sorry. It is going to be on Wednesday, July 20th at 10:30 a.m. We're gathering at River Park. We're going to have a march down to the Ajax site and have a youth-led protest. So, Kayla, what do you want to say about this?
So first, really quickly, for those who aren't familiar, the Flint Freedom Schools Collaborative is a local organization that focuses on literacy-focused enrichment for Genesee County youth and most concentrated youth that live in or near the city of Flint. And so this is a program that is dedicated to building a village for young people in the city of Flint, a village of people who cares about their holistic health, not simply their grades or misbehaviors or things of that nature, but people who are truly dedicated to seeing them grow and become engaged, fully catered like members of society. And so that's what the Flint Freedom Schools Collaborative is. And so a part of our programming that we do is our Children's Defense Fund summer program that is actually running currently in the city of Flint. And as a part of our summer program, we have a National Day of Social Action. And what that is an opportunity for our young people to be mobilized around an issue. It is an opportunity for them to learn about civic engagement, to learn about community engagement. We have pillars as a part of our program that our young people learn about. So learning that they can make a difference in themselves, in their families, in their communities, in their country, in their world. And so one of the things that we learn about this year for National Day of Social Action is climate justice. That was our focus, our theme, so to speak. And we were like, Mona, like we have to speak to Mona. And so we were able to get in contact with her. And so, yes, as she said, next Wednesday on the 20th, we will be hosting a youth-led protest. We will be marching, we will be speaking, we will have speakers from both sites. We have two sites in the city of Flint. We'll be having conversation about just climate justice in the city of Flint in general, because as Mona said, this Ajax plant is one of several issues that are compounded that are affecting the health of Flint city residents. And it is no coincidence that they put it close enough to impact the Flint city residents' health, but not close enough for them to actually have legal say in the zoning. So this is an opportunity. It is open to the community. So if you are interested to attend, as she said, we will be meeting up at River Park, and it'll run. I think we're planning for a little over an hour, right, Mona?
I think with the march, it'll fully end by about 12:30.
Okay, so about 2 hours total. But this is an opportunity, like I said, for all of us to be mobilized in our community. This is something that impacts all of us. I mean, it is 400 families that are in the city, but one of the things that we teach our scholars at Freedom Schools is that we are our brother's keeper. And so despite the fact that it will only impact that not only, but it will impact those 400 families that are in that area and within the radius, what we also understand about environmental issues like this is that there are residual impacts of having this many industrial like buildings and plants close together. And so although the permit says a certain amount of impact or effect will be created by this plant, we know that there are residual impacts and that this is compounded by other environmental issues that the city of Flint is facing. And so, yep, that's my spiel. Is there anything I missed that you'd like to add?
That sounds great. I was just going to add that, like you were saying, all the pieces connect together. And so when you have air pollution, it settles into soils, it settles into waterways. There's the risk and drain, which drains stormwater off of the industrial complex and ultimately into the Flint River. They have 2 detention basins that Ajax created. They're half full of water already, and it hasn't even been raining. And what they're like, if you can imagine, like really long, big, almost like pools where the water can infiltrate slowly into the ground. But again, if the water is contaminated from things coming off the site, that's highly problematic. And I've talked to people who, I talked to a lady at a food giveaway, and she's like, yeah, my husband used to work with asphalt and he died of COPD. Like, that happens. People, I mean, this is like no joke. And there's so many kids in the area already with asthma, and adults as well. So it's very concerning. And but that like, I'm concerned about the waterway impacts as well. And the other thing is on the other side, on the Genesee Township side, what do you have? You've got Bluebell Beach, Stepping Stone Falls, Crossroads. Where do all the families in the area go to recreate when we need to get away and we don't have a lot of money, or we want to do something great for our kids? Bluebell Beach, Stepping Stone Falls, Crossroads, right?
Yes.
Imagine going to those places and it smells like a freshly paved road all the time. That's my fear. This has a wide impact. Hot mix asphalt plants, also, people don't always realize, can reduce your property value. There was a study in another community, I think it was like 56 or 52% drop in housing prices within, I think it was a mile radius. That's significant. That's a loss of generational wealth. And yeah, there's a lot of public housing, but there's a lot of single family homes, low income families who are living right there. So, you know, we have to stand together and stop this from happening. The other thing I want to add is that this plant, it's modular. So my understanding is that it can be moved. Yeah, it's a huge plant. There would be a cost of moving it, but how do you put a price on all these lives, right? So our message the whole time has not been, don't build the plant at all. Our message has been, don't build it there. You know, all the work that's being done on I-69, guess who's making that? Ajax. They're getting millions of dollars. You know why they're doing this plant? They have 6 other plants in Michigan. 6 other plants. They are poising to get millions of dollars from the Michigan Department of Transportation within the next couple of years for the I-475 reconstruction. I don't know if you've seen anything about the Pell study. There's a study that's been underway for about a year, a little under a year, looking at the kind of like the social and community impact, feedback portion for the reconstruction of I-475. And if I can just make one other social like connection here, is that when I-475 was created during the time of urban renewal or urban removal, right? Where a ton of Black families and immigrant families were displaced, not given the value of their homes. I know somebody I was talking to today, Ajane Young, and she was like, yeah, I had a family member who lived there and the home was worth 150,000 and they were given 14. What happened was it shoved a lot of people into poverty. And you're talking about at a time when it was not safe for Black people to cross to the west side of Saginaw Street. Like socially, that's what the environment was. So there was Floral Park and there was St. John's and the St. John Street neighborhood. And those areas were destroyed to put the highways in. And where did people go? They went to Atherton East Terrace and they went to River Park and other housing complexes as well. Howard Estates probably as well, right? And Atherton East was illegally built in a floodplain. So people had a lot of water issues, mold, things coming up to their doorsteps. And so in the last a little under 10 years, about 7 years, there was a pretty massive community planning process. And 75% of residents that tear this place down, it is not a great place to live. We want to relocate. And so because the majority of people wanted that, and there were, again, it was illegally built. It never should have been built there. There's new affordable housing being built. Well, where are people going until their housing is ready? One of the places is River Park, right? And so people are moving there, waiting for a better life. And now there's this plant is going to be affecting their kids. So there's all of these social justice connections. Yes, the new housing, Culk Park Commons, is in Smith Village, but only the first phase of 3 phases of construction have been done. And so there's still a lot of people waiting for their housing. So there's just a lot of different social justice connections to this. And we need to really continue to keep it in front of people. We need to keep it in front of the media as these cases go to court, because otherwise it's going to seem like nobody really cares. The plant is built. Let's just get on with it, like they did with the incinerator. But we're talking about generations affected.
And not only generations affected, but once again, we're talking about a compounded effect. So we're not talking about, oh, they're building an asphalt plant and it's sore on the eyes, and so people are aggravated. No, we're talking about generations of them dumping their problems into the city of Flint, or ignoring the complaints of the city of Flint, or ignoring the side effects of issues that they've created in the city of Flint, and then ignoring and continue. So this is truly, once again, an opportunity for us to gather as a community and support a cause that impacts all of us. If not personally, then it is personal, because it impacts those who are close to us.
Can I add one other quick point? I know we're going long on Ajax,
no, go
but
ahead.
it's so important. The fact that they want to build their plant there, part of it is an unintended consequence of Governor Whitmer's Fix the Damn Roads initiative. So a lot of her campaign has been, we're going to fix the roads, we're going to fix the roads, right? Yeah, everybody wants good roads, but if what you're doing is creating another environmental injustice in all the places, Flint, and we have said this to her. That's why we did a mock funeral in Lansing, and we handed her all of these public comment documents, and not even just ours, HUD's, EPA's, all of it, in these like mock coffins, right? Well, not to her, but to her people, right, who took it to her. You're still implicated if you are given the information that this is part of an outfall of your policies and you're doing nothing about it. That's on you. And I think with this election coming up, I'm not targeting any particular person, but I think we have to be attuned when we're thinking about all of the candidates. We have to be attuned to the difference between those who are good on environment and those who are good on environmental justice. Those are two different things, right? You have to be good on environmental justice. You should be good on environmental justice to get support from folks in Flint, right? It's not just about state parks. We need those too, but standing up for people of color and others who are marginalized in neighborhoods like this that are low income, where, so like you said, they're made to be dumping grounds because people don't care. That's a problem. So I'm on my soapbox. I'm going to step off of it, but
Please.
it's something we have to keep elevating, because it just seems like it's a lot easier for politicians to tackle issues of environment than environmental justice.
Yeah.
Because I'll just say, like, Ajax execs give donations to campaigns. You can look up the information, it's public data.
Yeah. Thank you. And like you said, alongside the many things that Governor Whitmer, and I think we spoke a little bit about this in our initial conversation, one of the things that she ran on was that she would be a governor of the people. She replaced our former governor, who I won't even name, who led us into this water crisis, who literally pushed the red button that ignited this flame, and then to replace him, or to step into those footsteps and continue to, even if it is implicitly or as a result of, or a side effect of other issues, which we all want the roads to be fixed. But the fact of the matter is there are other needs that are being ignored. And so we are, go ahead.
I would say intentions don't really matter. Impacts matter at the end of the day. And like I said, it's one thing if you don't know, but when it's brought to light, then you have a moral and ethical obligation to do something. They can just move the plant. That's it. That's all we want. Make your asphalt, make your money, build the beautiful roads. Great. But just don't build that plant there.
Yeah. Fix the damn roads and move the damn plant.
Yeah, there you go. That's brilliant, man. That should be the slogan.
All right, so we are getting short on time, but really quickly, as we're wrapping up, I want to know, what advice do you have for youth who are interested in becoming more active with environmental justice, or in their communities in that area? What actions can they take, like right now at any age, to become more involved in that kind of work?
I think find something you're passionate about and just start talking to people about it. And in whatever way you want to, and find other people who care about it too. It could be your neighbors, it could be other groups that are working on it, and just get plugged in. Young people, you have a power beyond, I think, what you even know. I mean, if you look at social movements across the world, they're usually started by young people, right? Or people get that fire in them when they're young. And you get listened to differently. And I know a lot of spaces, when you're young, you don't get listened to. Or like when I was young, you're told, like, you should be seen but not heard, which is like really sick and insidious. I hate that phrase. But you're gonna have to live with whatever happens. And so you have a stake in whatever social issue you're passionate about. So I would say, come join our protest. I want to lift up two other things if I can really quick. I do want to share, for anybody interested in, I didn't really talk much about the Buick City piece, but like I said, there's this new buyer, Ashley Capital. And they are buying the remaining 360 acres. And we're starting a conversation next week. This is something I'd wanted to start before the pandemic, and then everything kind of shut down. We need to have a community vision for what happens. And so very specifically from an environmental justice lens, because if we don't get ahead of this, we're going to be fighting what we don't want instead of creating what we do want. So we need to get ahead of it. So I'm really fortunate to be working with some Michigan State University interns through the Flint Community Initiative. And Shini Yao has helped research different solutions. I said, we need to think about what do we do to protect the residents around? You can see this picture. Here's the Buick City site and all these houses. This is terrible zoning policy. The new comprehensive, the new draft zoning code would not allow this, where you have heavy industry right next to residential. It should be graduated. You know, you'd have industry, commercial, residential. So there's a buffer. How do we create a buffer? What are ways that we can protect the surrounding neighborhoods from whatever industry that comes? We need to think about green jobs. How do we make sure that they're good jobs, but jobs that don't harm the environment or that help the environment that come out of the site? Green jobs for people in Flint, right? We can be a city that gets put on the map for being part of this revolution that's going to be coming with energy sustainability, right? And then the last thing is like green buildings so that the workers are safe and that whatever happens in this massive site does not negatively impact the environment the ways factories did in the past. So I really want to invite everybody. If you're interested, it's over Zoom, Thursday, July 21st, 12 to 2 at tinyurl.com/Buick City. You can call in too. We want to talk about this and start to form this vision so that we can go to Ashley Capital and say, you know, we care about what happens here and this is what we want. And there could be other ideas. Those, I mean, again, we're bringing it to the community from an environmental justice lens. The other thing I would say is, I didn't really talk about this a lot, but with the St. John neighborhood, I'm working really closely with the St. John Street Historical Committee. And these are the folks who grew up in St. John before their homes were demolished to put in 475 and to put in all of the industry that's up there to the east of Buick City, right? So these are folks who remember how vibrant their neighborhood was. And they said, you know, we had everything we needed. We had to, because of restrictive covenants on properties, we weren't allowed to live in other places. We had movie theaters, we had restaurants, we had laundromats, we had everything we needed was in this little microcosm of a community. And it was where there was mostly Black residents and immigrants all here, a melting pot, they said. So we're actually working to build a memorial. And I started that work when I worked at the city, and I'm continuing it through my organization. On West Boulevard Park, the Flint River Trail runs through it. If that's something you care about, trying to create a environmental justice out of that situation for the people who grew up there. They were kids when they lived there. We want to create this memorial while they're alive so they can enjoy it with their children and grandchildren. So if that's something that you're interested in, contact me. We're going to need to do fundraisers. There's all kinds of different creative approaches that young people have that I'm sure I'm not thinking about, but we need to raise a couple $1 million, and the city has already committed, Mayor Neely has committed $250,000. We have a lot more fundraising to go. And it's going to be, it's really that park, is called West Boulevard Park right now. It basically has a Flint River Trail and a couple broken down benches in it. We're looking at putting in a beautiful pavilion, a playground, statues commemorating Black community leaders from the area, benches that highlight the different faith centers that were in the neighborhood, historical plaques. We're working with Sloan. We're starting to think about what would the language look like to bring that history alive. If you go in the area, a lot of the streets are just gone, right? So the residents are like, if you look at a map, you can't even see what our community was like. We need to bring it alive, and we need to talk about urban renewal and that history and have people understand so that it never happens again for future generations. So that's going to be a huge lift. And anybody who cares about that, please reach out to me and I'll plug you right in.
Really quickly, I know we're wrapping up and we're getting short on time, but can you quickly speak to the issue of mold in schools in the city of
Oh,
Flint
yeah.
or locally?
Sure. So here's just a little fun tip for all the young people out there. If you want to enter a space, sometimes you just have to elbow your way in. That's how I've gotten plugged into a lot of different things. Don't ask permission. Just be like, I need to be in that space and I would like to come. You need to just tell me when and where it is. Okay. So somehow I got on calls. Oh, there's the EPA indoor air quality team. And they're doing work in different communities, including Flint. And one of the things that they do in communities is that they go into places like community centers or schools, and they do indoor air quality assessments. And I said, oh, I really want to see how that works. I want to learn it. Can I just tag along? Because they were going to do these in Flint community schools. So I got to learn about the assessment. We looked at Brownell Elementary, Holmes STEM Academy. We looked at Doyle Ryder, which had part of the roof cave in about a year ago because there was so much deferred maintenance. They just kept putting it off that the roof literally caved in and there's visible mold all over the carpet. And we looked at Southwestern Classical Academy too. So what we did is we walked through, we interviewed the principals, we talked to staff, we talked to teachers, and we looked at, we started with specifically with rooms that were known to have problems. And one of the common threads, so this is about mold, but it's more than mold. It's all the things that can trigger upper respiratory problems. So it was looking at things like, are there areas of leaking? Are the mats as you walk in big enough to trap all the water? Are chemicals being used? Are children touching chemicals? They were, and not washing their hands, like Clorox wipes. They're meant to be used and then you wash your hands to get the chemicals off your hands. Things like that. So there's a very long list. It's a very in-depth assessment for HVAC systems. What kind of filtration is being used for? Is there air purification? In a lot of the schools, there were these air purifiers put in, but they were low quality. And so there's actually ozone being released into the classrooms. There are schools that have 30 air conditioning units. You know, the schools used to be open air. That's how you get, there was no air conditioning when they were built. And you just didn't have air conditioning. It wasn't the standard. That's just how it was. So it's not like it was intentional. It's just like that not everybody had that. And it's a newer kind of technology in terms of like being seen as standard. So what they've tried doing is putting in these mobile units, but some of the schools have like 20 just sitting or 30 sitting in boxes, because like Brownell, when you plug them in, if you ran 2 of the air conditioning units in the same hallway, it would knock out the light system because the electrical, it would overload it. So the common theme that I found, and I spoke to the school board about this a few weeks ago, was you got to fix the roofs. Whatever buildings you're going to save, you have to fully replace the roofs. Some of the roofs should have been fully replaced 10 or 20 years ago, at least. So like with Brownell, so what's happening is right now they're trying to stabilize the schools. They've had, a year ago they had kids were missing 2 weeks of school because of the high heat events, which is part of climate change, and so now they're trying to retrofit and get those air conditioning units in. Unfortunately, not only are they having to do big upgrades to the electrical, you normally would mount these air conditioning units on the roofs. But with Brownell, the roof is so soft, you couldn't even put one on there. So that's why if you drive up, you're going to see that there's 4 that have been installed in the entryway, and then they have like security gates around them. So I would just encourage you, if this is something you're concerned about. I've also heard teachers talk about chronic headaches and different upper respiratory things in certain rooms because of the leaking through the roofs when it would rain. It just sends the signal to kids like, we don't care about you. And it's a problem of leadership, right? That everybody kicks it down the road. Now, this Flint Community Schools have ESSER funding, which is like the school kind of equivalent to the ARPA funds, the American Recovery Act program, American Recovery Program
Rescue
Act.
plan, something.
Yeah.
something.
They can use the money to replace the roofs. So a point of advocacy I would recommend everybody get into is to go to the school board, write them letters, whatever you want to do, tell them we are behind you. We want you to commit millions of dollars, whatever it takes, to fully replace the roofs of any buildings you're not going to close. It is the only way to make it sustainable. It would also make it possible for them to put solar panels on the roofs. And then that would, again, reduce the energy burden of the buildings. And then you could do environmental education with the kids talking about the solar panels. So it's a win-win all the way around. And if they don't do that, the buildings will crumble. And when your roof is gone, you're going to have substantive problems with the building structure within a few years because of the elements. So it's really critical. So that's the other thing I would say advocate around.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for providing so many helpful tips and hints and so much information, more importantly, about how we can be mobilized locally in our community and several issues for us to mobilize around. Once again, if you would like to engage with Mona, we do have our, or engage with the ETA Coalition, ETM Coalition, I'm sorry. We do have our National Day of Social Action Climate Justice Protest next Wednesday, which is on our page, as well as the other information that she shared with us today. And if you do want to reach out to the ETM Coalition, you can reach them at etmflint@gmail.com. Once again, that is etmflint@gmail.com. If you just need further instructions about how you can be mobilized in our community and maybe what issues there's a need for advocacy in. And with that being said, I will pass it back to Jasmine to close us out.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to our guest. Thank you for everyone who watched the show or are going to rewatch later. And with that, have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.